Hello, everyone. Oh, there we go. I'll work a few of you up. Hi. I'm Scott Kewley. I'm the CEO of Techex. Techex is a specialist in broadcast technology in the transport and the processing space. I'm really pleased today to be hosting this Fireside Chat with Stuart Baillie and Richard Bailey. They are not related. They don't have the same spellings on their surname. And we're going to be talking about a project that we've been working on together for the past 12 months. So with that in mind, I think we start with Stuart for an introduction, please.
So my name is Stuart Baillie. I work for Paramount, and I'm the Senior Vice President of Media Engineering and Global Distribution. So effectively, we manage about just south of 300 linear channels globally that are distributed to about 179 countries in 47 languages to about 500 million households. So really what I do for Paramount is the broadcast technology side.
Thanks, Stuart. Richard?
So I joined Techex just over 20 years ago. And for the last 10 years, I led Techex until we found Scott to help us lead us into the future. Since Scott came on 18 months ago, I've been leading engineering and software development within the organization.
Thank you, gentlemen. So first question to you, Stuart. So can you give us a bit of background to your strategy and some of the things that you're thinking about with this project?
Yeah, sure. So to break it down simply, our strategy could probably put into 3 buckets. So first bucket is effectively reducing our cost base, especially around the broadcast operations. Second is about growing revenue, and third is really about increased productivity. So if I kind of dive into each of those a little bit. So on the reduced costs, like what do we mean by that? It's quite a glib statement. So we've got a very clear direction of travel from our CTO, Phil Weiser, around we really want to be a cloud-first, internet-first company. So what we're looking at is from a transport perspective, we are offloading our video transport to open internet protocols using ARQ, etc. And we started a journey in 2017 to effectively deprecate our satellite portfolio. We're currently at 56% reduction, and that will be completed by 2029. On the playout side, we started that in 2029, and that was really about moving all our cloud playout into the cloud. We'll talk about more later in the conversation. So we started with Cloud Playout 1.0 in 2019, grew that to about 133 channels, worked out kind of what the teething issues were and the growing pains were, and then embarked on Cloud Playout 2.0, which is where we really onboarded Techex and the relationship started, and we'll talk more about that in a minute. The other areas, though, is obviously facilities consolidation. That's been very big for us, and video over IP has been a key enabler for that, with obviously multicast networking and be able to move video traffic from facility to facility. So the final piece I would say is also channel optimization. So every year we're looking at profitability of our channels, how we can reduce the costs, do you spin it from a regional to a global feed, etc. So yeah, that's really where we've been going on that side. And then on the grow revenue side, it's probably slightly more obvious. It's DAI. What are we doing with SCTI 35, going from type 5 to type 6? Where are we going with SCTI 224 outbound messaging? There's a lot of growth in FAST as well. We're seeing a lot of channels that we call simple FAST growing into what we would now call premium FAST, where we need better inventory management, better ad management, better branding capabilities, and better DMARC flavors. It's not just HLS. We can do transport streams or whatever else. The final piece is probably localization, standards, and interoperability. Still doing lots of subs and dubs on international tracks to make them more regionally relevant. And then interoperability is a huge one. So really working out how we can embed our operations into other operations, especially looking at new standards, HDR, SDR, obviously, UHD, what we're doing there, moving to 1080p, all that good stuff. And then the final one is increased productivity, and that really just is about eliminating our manual operations. So how do you move to kind of like low code, no code deployments, etc. And how do we really kind of do monitoring control by exception better? So that's really our strategy and what we've kind of benchmarked our tech vision for the next number of years for broadcast.
That's great, thank you. And I can imagine you've got quite a lot on your plate with all those strands. So if we just turn to the project that we're discussing today. Can you talk to us about, how the project came about, what it involves, timeframes, the whole background?
Sure. So I kind of touched on a little bit, and I'll expand on what I've just said. So, as I mentioned, we launched Cloud Playout 1.0 in 2019. We then, again, we had a whole bunch of issues that we needed to address, so we came up with Cloud Playout 2.0, which was effectively the London Media Centre was the first operation we wanted to move onto that platform. So it was a big project, 64 channels, but that, I don't think that the number of channels was the biggest complexity. The bigger complexity was more around the sheer volume of requirements. I mean, when you go in, these 64 channels went out to 171 countries in 35 languages to about 250 million households. So there was a lot of complexity there, working with a lot of different regional standards, a lot of different regional partners, and a lot of disparate downstream equipment as well. So I'd sort of say that really was kind of the scope of what we did. But there was some fantastic wins on that project. I mean, why did we do it? So I mentioned the 8 reasons, but I think there's more than just that. There's also cost to achieve. So, our cloud playout model is about 60% cheaper on capital than our CP1, about 30% cheaper on OpEx than CP1. So cost was an important factor. Also, we were on a 15-year-old K2 SDI platform. To develop SCTI 35 on that was a non-starter because it was an end-of-life product. So it was really how can we sort of unlock a lot of those DAI opportunities as well. And actually, we did launch with a whole number of those that drove significant value from day one when we launched. Some other pieces as well. We had some good firsts there. So obviously, we have to make the whole IP stack, IP end-to-end. That comes with opportunities and challenges. Obviously, great opportunities to simplify your operation from end-to-end transport, but interoperability challenges along the way. We did some other great things as well. We launched our first ever cloud-based statistical multiplex. So that was a good first as well. And then it also gave us a good opportunity when we were launching in the cloud to rethink how we were doing DR, how we were doing resilience. And that had a real financial benefit. It really has hit the bottom line well. So that's been a good one. And then the last thing I would say, and the obvious one for this meeting, is we also onboarded, obviously, Techex. So we onboarded the Cloud IO Edge product and the Darwin TSACO product. And I think we'll talk more about why that was such a successful part of the project as we go through this conversation.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, how did you come about working with us then? So how did that whole process start?
So I think it's probably easiest to, the way I would sort of frame it, the easiest way is, as I said, we've kind of got quite clear strategic direction on where we're going, obviously, with internet first, cloud first. So we know what we need to do. We have got quite clear goals as well about what we want to do. We don't make glib statements like we're just going to consolidate. We're very targeted. It's like what inefficiencies you try to address, what does the end state look like, what benefit does that drive, and then off the back of that, obviously, there's cultural change around obviously moving from what I would basically call a set of vertical stacks, IT and broadcast engineering, and moving those to effectively horizontal stacks where we're basically building our video services on commodity compute network storage database. So with regards to Techex, so how did we come about to actually start working with Techex? Well, like I said, we had 8 of those specific pain point areas we want to address. First one was cost. Well, Techex played a big part of that because you've got a very flexible business model. We can do licensing, pay as you go. You allow us to port that licenses into the cloud. So financially, it was a good investment because there's a lot we could do with that IP. I think the second point was the fact that if you look at scalability, the fact that the self-service tools that Techex seems to offer with a really rich customization tool for building workflows meant that we could deliver workflows, initiatives, and just new developments incredibly quickly, because we can basically choose to either have our team do it because it's a very intuitive self-serve tool set, or we can scale and burst by going with ProServe with Techex. So that's been fantastic. I think another really important one as well was the agility. So the whole of CP2 has been built on a microservices architecture, as you would expect. And I think the benefit we've seen, obviously, with the modular approach of Techex is it just fits perfectly into that idea. We don't want a monolithic platform. We want best of breed components, and the fact that we can swap out modulars tactically and opt in, opt out to modules, it's just completely
maybe that's a good time actually for Richard to jump in and, if you don't mind, Stuart, and
please
talk a little bit more about that reference to modularity and, the product that we have in the solution.
I can take a second just to introduce Darwin. So Darwin, Techex is born out of traditional broadcast. We've always serviced the tier one market, and we feel like we have a fairly unique perspective understanding the precision of traditional broadcast and having a software native culture within our organization. So really the focus of Darwin was to bring that traditional precision that, until 10 years ago in FPGA and hardware, was really understood as a benchmark threshold, and try and achieve the same type of precision in a pure software solution, capable of running in shared compute in public cloud. So as we started to want to get stuck into some of these problems, things like the TSACO, we envisaged a modular platform, which we ended up calling Darwin, that would allow us to build a series of modules to address some of the biggest pain points in the industry, and then allow them to be assembled by our projects teams and our customers' projects teams to surgically address the different requirements and pain points that we found in the industry.
Thanks, Rich. Sorry, Stu, back to you on the rest of the points.
Yeah, I think it was good to jump in on the modularity piece, because that modular framework is very powerful for us. The other key tenet of the problems we had with CP1 and what we wanted to address in CP2, and when I say CP, I mean cloud playout, so I can state me obvious, was data and automation. So what we've really found is with Techex, you've got obviously the Kafka message bus, you've obviously got open APIs, but also you've got fantastic Grafana tools for visualizing data and trending, etc. So it just completely dovetailed into our ambition around automation and data.
Perhaps I'll just touch on that a little bit. So we really feel that working and focusing on the most sophisticated tier one customers, each of our partner customers has already selected a lot of the tooling within their platforms, and we see it as our responsibility to build native integrations into whatever tooling they've already selected. So in this case, InfluxDB and Grafana was heavily leveraged, but we really make a commitment to our customers that whatever their tooling is, we'll have a native, highly performant integration available for them.
Fantastic. And the last one, I think, and I didn't think I'd be talking as passionately about this one as I've ended up talking about it. The last one was basically support. It was the availability. Obviously, we went, you need 5 nines availability for broadcast, but we're quite pragmatic, fast channels maybe less so, and blah, 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 blah. But the important point was, what I'm trying to make on support was, it was a really strong card for Techex that we found. We would not be in the place we were at without Techex with regards to how you were helping us manipulate transport streams, rebuild transport streams, but taking ownership of the problems from a point of view of, if Paramount had a problem somewhere in the value chain, you were absolutely front and center of not only owning the issue, but basically being committed to fixing it, regardless where the problem was in your domain or otherwise. So I think, again, I'm not trying to blow you from it too much, but I would really describe it. It really was an honest partner. It was really what I would call partnership. So I think that was something we really wanted to make a key point on this.
And to you, Rich, is that typical, or do we do that for everybody, or?
Yeah, absolutely. We don't aspire to having many customers. We aspire to having a few partners, and it was a promise I made to you at the beginning of the project. And we think partnership is a kind of an overused and quite a cheap term, but hopefully we truly delivered on that.
And you certainly did.
So at the beginning then, were there other options, or, because my experience of this project was that some of this didn't exist even for us at the beginning, right? So you came to us with a problem, and Richard and the team found the solution, and you took a leap of faith with Techex to build that outcome. And from your perspective, Richard, how much of this existed at the beginning?
And we were fortunate that when you came to us with the problem, we had already decided it was a problem we wanted to address, and we'd done the groundwork to prove out that it was something that we'd be capable of delivering. Perhaps at this point we could just describe the top of the problem, perhaps.
Go for it.
So, the issue we saw in the market is, as organizations move to cloud native architectures, you start to talk about things like immutable infrastructure. you start to have strategies that mean that you're going to destroy your infrastructure, your live on-air infrastructure frequently. In the old days, you'd have an SDI ACO, and that would perhaps be lent on maybe quarterly or annually when you did a fairly heavy upgrade to a core infrastructure. As you move to cloud infrastructure, it becomes something you want to do much more frequently. You're going to destroy that infrastructure every time you deliver an upgrade, or every time you see an issue within that infrastructure, you destroy it, recreate it. You might even have a policy that you're going to destroy and recreate it weekly as part of your security approach. So we're having to destroy the infrastructure much more frequently. You now need a way of being able to seamlessly swap over from your A infrastructure to your B infrastructure without impact to air. So that's what we set out building, and the team at Paramount call that our TSACA.
Okay. And whilst you're talking about Darwin, Rich, what else is on the plan, and what have you built so far, and what's coming?
Yeah, so it's all about the same approach of building, I think, very transparently, perhaps compared to some of our peers, but building from an extremely low level up. We're really taking an approach of trying to avoid as many third-party libraries as possible. Certainly the generic media libraries are incredibly powerful and probably serve 80 or 90% of the market extremely well. But at the very top end of the market, we don't think that those third-party libraries can be underwritten in the way that, we commit to our customers and partners that we will underwrite them. So, in the case of this Seamless Splicer, it was really underpinned by an extremely powerful modern multiplexer written in Rust. And we've set out to make a whole series of other modules using that same methodology. So I've described there 2 of the modules, but on the show floor here, we're showing 84 different modules, performing, to similar levels of performance, the same types of functions.
Okay, great. So we talked about your strategy, Stuart. We talked about the project and the goals. How did it go? What were the outcomes?
Yeah, right. How do I answer this one? So it was definitely a challenging project. I'm looking at my team in the background here, and I'm sure you'd agree.
Still smiling.
Yeah. It's a nervous smile. No, I'm joking. Sorry. When I say a complex project, I mean because I've already articulated, it's a very, very wide, complex set of requirements. We've got, again, just say, 171 countries, 35 languages, 250,000 households. There is a lot of features we have to build into that. So I think that was certainly just walking into eyes wide open that, this is a complex problem. We're dealing with some new technologies, and we're dealing with a very vast selection of requirements. I think the good piece was, though, if I kind of turn it more towards the challenges where Techex helped, IP interoperability is always a problem whenever we do these migrations now. Obviously nothing on SDI. We expect it. And I think what we found refreshing on this project was, again, just the fact that you were effectively able to take those IP interoperability problems and again, not only own them, but help triage it, help kind of work with kind of upstream, downstream, and be a real partner. And I think one value I think we all really got there was it's clear that you have got a very good respect within the industry with a lot of other partners. So what we found was, rather than this kind of pointing fingers, what's all right by us, we found at the moment Techex were coming in and sort of saying, well, actually, what you need to look at is this, that, and the other. All parties stood up and listened. So I think we found it as a very good, credible source as well to point out the facts to all parties involved in the problem. So that was certainly very helpful as well.
Yeah, just to add to that, one of the cultures in our business is we're not looking to support products or technology. We're looking to support systems. And in the case of this, we supported a small but important part of the system, but we didn't treat that as the piece that we owned and we were responsible for. And furthermore, if we're looking for issues within a system, actually, we're delighted if we can identify either that it's a fault within our software or a fault that can be addressed within our software, because that's really the point of what we're doing, building in-house from such a low level. We know that if it can be addressed in our software, we can address it.
Yeah, and I think one last piece I'd maybe add is, I would almost call this a side benefit or the cherry on the cake, whatever you want to call it. As we went through the project and obviously through that core project, we don't just do one project at a time. We're kind of juggling multiple concurrent projects at all times. we had another very important project come along with Sky in the UK for the upgrade to AdSmart 2.0. And we looked to tackle it in our traditional way that we would do it, and it just would not work. The timelines were not there. So the engineering team came up with a fantastic way to really use Darwin as a real Swiss Army knife to address it in a very different way to how we've addressed it before. It was delivered in an exceptionally fast time and with very little fuss. So I think I keep using this word Swiss Army knife. I think we've just found it as a fantastic tool in the tool set that's opened up a lot of opportunities for us that were just not there before in our transport stream switching or our cloud IO. So yeah, again, just very excited about the Swiss Army knife approach.
And that second requirement that you just talked about was the Sky project. Were you thinking about Darwin for that at the beginning, or was that just something you discovered as you started to use the tool?
I mean, I should really throw to Jamie for that question, who's in the crowd, but I think what I would say was, and Jamie, tell me if I'm wrong, again, we had a very traditional approach for how we would do it. You know, obviously we were doing all the triggering in the playlist, 104 to 35, blah, 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 etc. And it just was quite monolithic in the way that there's a bunch of scheduling changes we've got to make. There's a bunch of payload changes we've got to make. Whereas with the Darwin approach, it was like, no, just take the transport stream, pass some data, rebuild that Scotty message, and we're good to go. It was a much leaner, meaner, and smarter way of delivering a conditioned transport stream with the right Scotty payload.
Great. And
this is a problem we see fairly frequently. And, you know, the architecture of Darwin lends itself really elegantly to solving these types of problems. So Darwin is an event-driven framework. And one of the things we can do is, as Scotty messages come in, they fire off events. They go into an extremely flexible logic block capability that we have that's able to, really without limitations, manipulate those events and then trigger subsequent events, or even manipulate those events. And in this case, talk to another third party partner, of Paramount and receive instruction from them and then provide further manipulation. Our aspiration and what we've been able to achieve is really address any, without limitation, complexity in this domain without any customization to the product. So we're always delivering standard product, and engineers, ours or our partners, are able to implement that project specific customization without us taking on board any technical debt or encumbering them with any long-term supportability issues.
And I think that logic box piece has been incredibly powerful for us, again, from that support component, and it's so user intuitive. I mean, it's probably fair to say the engineering team picked up incredibly quickly and found it a pleasure to use, as opposed to some of the, you know, less friendly UIs and UXs. So, so that was definitely a bonus, coupled with the fact that we can actually do scripted deployments as well. So again, it's just a very, very powerful IP transport stream Swiss Army knife.
so the key is keep adding modules to the Swiss Army knife, keep leveraging those new modules to save time and operational overheads. Actually, Rich, you know, what is next in Darwin then? So, you know, you said 84. How many are we happy with? What else is beyond 84? How many do we want Stuart to use? Or maybe Jamie?
Obviously, the number of modules we have already can be assembled to address a huge number of different use cases. Only, you know, 2 have been described here. But Darwin isn't just for dealing with compressed transport streams. It's got a backplane capable of dealing with UHD raw video frames. And already within Darwin and within the R&D teams, we're working on a full suite of codec IO and the ability to manipulate and key and format convert all of that content on our backplane.
Okay, great. So, Stuart, thank you. What's next for you guys generally in terms of projects? Anything?
A lot of them. No, obviously, we know we're obviously going through the merger at the moment with Skydance, so we're hoping that closes middle of the year. We've got a very good blueprint though already for what we're planning to do in broadcast. Again, it's very much driven by our CTO's core tenants, play out in the cloud, transport on the internet. So it's just more of that, and we're working some very high profile projects now. So we're actually currently working on the CBS network migration. So I mean, that really is moving the crown jewels. So it shows our commitment to the cloud. Yeah. So that's great. But then I think when it comes back to actually Techex, I think it's like you said, it's this 80 plus X modules, and I did a walkthrough with the team in London, and we could sit all day saying how many ideas we came up with that would be useful for that. This would be useful for that. You can do, HTML5 rendering. You can do time delay. It felt like there was so much opportunity, that we'll probably look at it each time and be like, which module will address this?
It's so good to have such an enthusiastic customer on stage. Thank you. So I think we've got 5 minutes if there's any questions from the audience. Okay, well, thank you both very much for your time, and enjoy the rest of the show. We are just at the back in 2267 if anyone wants to come and see some of the things that we talked about today. Otherwise, we'll leave it there. Thank you.